Welcome back, everybody. I'll go ahead and call this daytime council meeting to order. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Agent,
Here.
Clegg,
Here.
Halliburton,
Here.
Sanchez, Thompson,
Here.
Woodings,
Here.
5 present, 1 absent.
We just had somebody else join. Was that by chance Councilmember Sanchez? All right. The record will reflect her presence when she joins us. First, we will move it up. Here she is. Will you please mark Councilmember Sanchez present?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Thanks, Shar. Second on the agenda is a request for approval the minutes from February 9th evening meeting.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the minutes from February 9th
Second.
evening meeting.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Woodings,
Yes.
Agent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thanks. Next up on our consent agenda, all items with an asterisk are considered to be routine by the council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from general order of business and considered in its normal sequence.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Woodings,
Yes.
Agent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. Next up under ordinances, we have one ordinance on first reading. And I just want to flag, of course, we'll have 2 more readings, but I want to flag this because it's an ordinance that puts into practice or creates a process for us to waive impact fees in a predictable manner as we seek to incentivize affordable housing. And so we have a bucket of funding for housing that could be used if applied for by builders of homes and other developers through our affordable housing incentive program, could be applied for and then applied to impact fees, just as another way that we can add tools to the toolbox and clarity around the tools that exist and the supports that exist to achieve more housing for everyone in our community.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before I ask for first reading, I just wanted to also note that you all should have gotten a memo this morning outlining the procedure that the city staff will use to consider an application for the affordable housing, just so you could understand how exactly this was going to be implemented. I think it's a great step. And with that, Madam Mayor, I would ask unanimous consent that all ordinances on first reading be read by number and title only and filed for the second reading calendar.
Without objection.
ORD-5-21, an ordinance amending Title 9, Chapter 2, Boise City Code to adopt exemptions to development impact fees for affordable housing, to provide for process and criteria for such exemptions, and provide an effective date.
Thank you. That was a relatively short ordinance. All right, next up under special business. First off, we have the appointment of Chris Danley to the P&Z Commission for a 4-year term ending February 2025. I just wanted to say a couple things about this. Oh, hi, Chris. I'm glad you're with us. Both Chris and the city, in the interest of transparency, wanted to and will disclose that Chris currently has some contracts with the city. And in advance of bringing Chris's nomination forward for consideration by council, we actually asked that Chris, with our ethics commission, undergo an ethics course here at the city of Boise to better understand when and how disclosures will or might need to be made as a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And with that, Chris completed the course willingly and has served in the past a short term on Planning and Zoning, and I was so pleased that he was interested in returning.
Madam Mayor, I ask unanimous consent for the appointment of Chris Danley to the Planning and Zoning Commission for a 4-year term ending February 2025.
Without objection.
And Madam Mayor, if I could, many of you know, I've known Chris for a long time. We worked together, starting a little over a decade ago, pretty closely. And I am so excited to have someone with his knowledge and experience on our Planning and Zoning Commission. And thank you, Chris, for applying. And thank you for going through that ethics process. I think that with that, you'll be a great servant to the city again. So thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead. Chris, we'll have you say something eventually too, but first I'm going to leave it to council members to welcome you or to state their case.
Thank you. I also just wanted to add my 2 cents. It's rare I get this excited about an appointment to one of our commissions, but Chris Danley is an outstanding individual. He's going to bring a ton to this position. Very happy that you are interested in it, Chris, and very happy with your selection, Madam Mayor. I'm really excited about it. Thanks, Chris.
Madam Mayor,
Go ahead.
I'll pile on this bandwagon. I've had the great opportunity to work with Chris for over a decade as well in this community, and not only his commitment to Boise, but his commitment to building community wherever he's at is something that I truly admire, and I'm really, really glad that you decided to take this step as a commissioner, and excited to have you on the team.
Well, welcome, Chris. I really appreciate your continued interest in serving the city, and I'm going to thank you in advance for the many, many hours that you'll put into reading materials, discerning decisions, and then, of course, responding to and working with the public and those that are putting matters before you. And with that, please feel free. Thanks for joining us, and you're welcome to take the floor.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to all the council members, many of you who I've known, and the fact that we've known each other for a decade starting to date us all, which is kind of scary, but but no, I really appreciate this opportunity. I look forward to it. I know you have a busy agenda, so I'll make my remarks pretty quick. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank my family for their support. My wife, obviously, with the 2 little ones being at home and the time commitment that all of you are acutely aware of. A lot of minutes spent reading and spending in front of the community, but this is why we do it, because we love our city so much and we want the best for it. So I look forward to the next several years and being part of hopefully a good positive growth trajectory. And again, thank you for your support.
Well, thank you, Chris. Appreciate it, and glad you were able to join us today.
Likewise, thank you very much.
Take care. Well, next up, we have the City of Trees Challenge update with Council President Clegg, of course, who has led this effort. And I think that Jennifer Tomlinson, our Superintendent of Parks, is also joining. Ooh, with an interesting fur buff around your shoulders. Or a great.
Thursday in my house today.
Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. I'm just going to share my screen really quickly. I'm going to go over what we've accomplished from FY20 and the project initiation. And then I'm going to turn it over to Council President Clegg so that she can talk about some of the impacts that we've had, and then go over some of our next steps that we're looking at. So in May, I think it was May of 2020, it was April or May, we launched on Arbor Day. Our Councilmember Clegg and our City Forester Mike Andrews made an announcement to launch our 100,000 tree planting initiative. This also includes planting 225,000 seedlings in forests around the city, and the 100,000 trees is to represent 1 tree for every household in the city, and the 235,000 seedlings is to represent 1 tree for every person in the city. And this is all being done in an effort to mitigate some of the impacts that we're seeing of climate change on our community. As part of the launch, we signed on and were recognized as a Tree City of the World. And then we also signed on to be part of the Trillion Tree Challenge, which is challenging to say. And we're adding our trees, and our efforts are going to be counted as part of that. And that's a worldwide effort. So in 2020, we were challenged a little bit by COVID. So we were able to develop some really exciting partnerships, one being with the Boise Farmers Market to give trees to residents who signed up. So we were able to give away 500 trees to residents through the farmers market. We within Parks and Recreation planted an additional 400 trees. And then the Boise School District has signed also, and their portion of it for the first year was to plant 200 trees. We were able to work with Planning and Development Services to start tracking how many trees we're seeing through development in the city. And from them, we had 1,000 trees that were planted. So all in for our first year, we planted about 2,000 trees, and we were able to start calculating the eco benefits of that and how that's going to start impacting climate change in our community. And with that, I will turn it over to Council President Clegg so that she can talk a little bit about those impacts.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you everyone for your support this last year. We just published an impact report for the City of Trees Challenge. You can find it on our website if you just search for City of Trees Challenge, or even just search for impact report. I think it will come up. As Jennifer said, this is not just a feel-good thing, but it really is aimed at having some impact both on climate and health and other social determinants of health in the city of Boise. The 2,100 trees we were able to plant this last year, we estimate that it increased the home value for homeowners who planted one of these trees or will over time by $35,000. They're quite valuable to have a good tree on your property. We think that 16 million gallons of stormwater was captured and cleaned by the tree canopy, and we conserved 6.3 million kilowatts of energy by shading homes and reducing electrical energy during the summer months. Those last two are the impacts that we know we have in our canopy across the city, because we've got a GIS database of the canopy. Those trees also removed 41,000 pounds of air pollutants and reduced carbon monoxide in the atmosphere by 5.3 million pounds. So as we go forward with this challenge, the focus is going to be on bringing those benefits to neighborhoods that don't enjoy quite as good a tree canopy today as some of the other neighborhoods. And Chris Danley, who was just on, actually helped do a report for us that looked at those social determinants of health and identified 2 neighborhoods and specifically where a tree canopy could make a big difference. And so this next spring, we're going to focus our work on those two neighborhoods. And I think, Jennifer, if you go ahead one slide, we'll go to that work plan. So the park tree giveaway this spring, we're going to partner in that with those 2 neighborhoods and look to focus the tree giveaway this spring in those places where we've identified that adding more trees will really make a difference in the heat, in the air quality, and just in the social good that trees bring to those particular places. We'll continue to work with the Treasure Valley Canopy Network. They'll work as the consultant for this project to make sure that everything stays on track, to keep our private sector partners in the loop, and to make sure that everything's going forward as planned. We'll also partner again with the farmers market to give away trees again this fall. That worked particularly well. It was a wonderful avenue to get trees out while still being COVID safe. The farmers market is going to continue much of what they did this last year, I think, even if COVID does subside, because it was such a success. So we will certainly partner with them again. We've identified that Federal Way can use more trees in the public right-of-way, so we'll be looking at planting those trees. The Parks Department has also got a lot of parks on on the docket that they'll be planting more trees again this year, not just federal way, right of way. And then finally, the IT department has worked really hard to help transition us to a new database collection platform. It's based on a platform called Tree Plotter, but with our IT department's help, we are able to localize it for Boise, and we think it will be a really good tool going forward. It's not quite up and ready yet, but should be by Arbor Day, so very excited about that. So Jennifer, if you'll go ahead to the next slide. That gets me to the request for this next year. I've talked to most of you about this. The City Council, of course, has a strategic initiative fund. And that fund, for those of you who are new, is a base fund, which means if we use it on base items, the base then moves with the project to the appropriate department. So if we approve the interim budget change on March 9th for this $80,000 from the Strategic Initiative Fund, that $80,000 will move into the Parks Department budget as base the following year. So I think it's a really exciting way to use this. It's how and why we set up the fund the way we did. And the Parks Department has been just an integral partner in making this happen. And they've been able to do it really in a way that didn't add a new position, didn't create a lot of work, but just use the people that were already there better and more efficiently with a lot of impact from them. We're also developing other innovative ideas to get trees to residents, identifying additional planting sites on public land in the city, including maybe some stormwater ones, and refining the collection data at the permitting level so that when new development happens, we really do understand what trees have been taken out and what trees are being replaced with, so we can really see what the canopy impact of that is. And all in all, the goal of this is to plant more trees. Before I turn it over to you, I just want to make sure that I thank all of our partners. We couldn't do it without them. This project really is one that takes partnerships. It's one that was an idea that wasn't going to happen if other people didn't step up. So first and foremost is our Parks Department. Mike Andrews, Jennifer Tomlinson, others have just been integral in making sure that we could do this. Our IT department, I mentioned, within our Parks Department, Danny Roop worked with IT to make sure that everything happened. Jamie Goldman in our Public Works Department made sure that this gets integrated with our climate action plan. Melinda McGoldrick in Energized Neighborhoods helped us reach out to the neighborhood associations, and we look to do more of that this next year. And then our outside partners, the Treasure Valley Canopy Network, really stepped up and organized and did outreach and made sure everything stayed on track. The Nature Conservancy of Idaho is our partner in planting the trees out in the forests. They're the ones who got the grant to plant 37,000 trees this spring, seedlings, this spring up on the burn north of Loman to repair that burn. And then we have valued private partners. Jakers Nursery got those first bit of trees for us. They're really good trees, good size. They got them in time to get them out at the farmer's market. And then of course the farmer's market was an invaluable partner in making sure that we could get them distributed this year. So with that, I'll stand for questions, and we have a couple of weeks before that IBC comes forward. If anyone has questions about that, you're welcome to ask them today, but we can also dig into them if you have concerns.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have any questions. Council President Clegg, I just have thanks to offer you. Having an initiative like this come forward this past year was a much needed bright spot in all the challenges that we faced as a community. And I just want to thank you for bringing this forward. I remember when I was a homeowner, I really appreciated, and I can't remember if the city was behind this or who it was, but I know my neighborhood association had connected us with, I don't know if it was the city of Boise or the Forest Service, to have our neighborhood association plant trees in the right-of-way strips. And even though I haven't owned my home in 10 years, I still drive by my house to check on my tree. So I know that these trees are going to have a long-lasting impact in the ways that you've described, but these trees are also, they become family. And even if you don't live with your family anymore, they do have a strong impact on the individuals who adopt them. So thank you, President Clay.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Also, I'll say something similar. Council President Clegg, this is exciting and inspiring type of policy. It's the type of, it really energizes me, and to watch you put this in place and how it's unfolding so outstanding in such an outstanding way. I just wanted to tip my hat and say thank you. It's a very exciting project that you're working, policy that you're doing, and it's just really coming together. I support it 100%.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you, Council President Clegg. It was really fun over the summer to get to volunteer to shove huge trees into Subaru Outbacks and put trees out the tops of sunroofs and do all kinds of crazy machinations to send these trees home with folks. I know we had talked about it kind of during the kickoff of this program, and I can't remember if we ever actually saw it. Do we have any like GIS mapping that kind of shows our canopy throughout the city so that we can target certain areas for increased canopy?
Great question, Councilmember Woodings. We had a full canopy GIS network map as of 2013. It's been kept somewhat up to date, and the tree plotter program that the IT department is working on in part is going to update that. And as that's updated, we'll be able to get much better data for our climate action goals and climate action network. And so I know Public Works is really interested in that as well. So it's there, it's not completely up to date, but you're right. We also shouldn't just plant trees because it feels good. We need to plant them in the right place where they do the most good. And getting that updated will help us do that.
That's great. And I think one thing that we've learned throughout the last years is that neighborhoods can be warmer if they have less tree canopy cover, and that can lead to detrimental health outcomes for their residents. And so I think that building a little bit more strategy around where we place trees as we get into especially the out years of this program could really help a lot of our residents live in cooler neighborhoods, which we know is good for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
I would note at the farmer's market that at least one person picked up a tree on a bicycle, and it wasn't me, but it was awesome to see so many people so excited. It was amazing how many people were excited to pick up those trees, and I think that they sold out the second that they were made available. So clearly that's something that our community wants to do. I do have a question, and I apologize for not knowing the answer already. For folks who may want to purchase their own trees or add to this initiative privately, is there a way for them to contribute their own efforts outside of the city?
Thank you, Councilmember Halliburton. That's also a great question. I didn't talk about it because the software isn't quite finished, but the goal is that anyone who plants a tree, whether we give it away to them, whether they get it some other way, whether it's part of a new development or replacement for a tree that came out, any of those trees we hope will get counted in the future. We're looking for a program where we can give coupons to private nurseries so that people who get a tree at a private nursery know to register it, know the benefits of planting it. We're also, one of the future goals is to set up a donation program so that if you don't need a tree yourself, you can donate for someone else to get a tree. So those are all things in the future. They're not quite up and running yet, but yes, those are all in the plans.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, thanks for that clarification. I think just like the stuff at the farmers market, people are eager to jump in and help however they can with this effort. So I'm excited to see how those other opportunities and initiatives pop up as well. Congratulations on job well done.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, council members. Look for the IBC on March 9th and look to, if you're interested in helping us plant those trees this spring when we do the giveaway in the Borough Park and Liberty Park neighborhoods, let me know.
Well, thank you, Council President, for your leadership on this. You know, this is an important way that we really can look at how we keep our neighborhoods cooler, which neighborhoods need more investment than others from a tree perspective. And, you know, just as Councilman Halliburton asked, every individual in this community can take part in it and help us meet the goals that you've established for tree planting. So I also look forward to passing more out because it was so fun to see people and their excitement over their trees. So thank you for your leadership on that.
Thank you. It was fun.
Next up, we have Mike Chirac. Are you with us? Thanks, Jennifer. Take care. Good to see you. Hi, Mike. We've got Mike Chirac here with a quick interim budget change. So with that, I'll hand it over to you to see if there are questions or comments.
Okay. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and council members. Yes, we have two interim budget changes this afternoon we are seeking approval for. I will just talk to them very briefly. The first one involves the geothermal fund, and there we have an opportunity to initiate a new capital project for $275,000 to do some needed downtown pipeline replacements. The benefit here is when CCDC has a street open, we'll be able to purchase materials and get them installed at much less cost and inconvenience to pedestrians and motorists and such. So this project would be funded with fund balance, and it's $275,000. I'm happy to stand for any questions. If there are no questions, I will go on to the next one.
Looks like you can go ahead, Mike.
Okay, the next interim budget change is a staffing adjustment. This will be neutral cost. Basically, we're looking at some critical staffing issues we can address without adding to base costs. Given the closure of Ice World, we are now evaluating how and when that might be reopened, and Parks has determined that it can be done with fewer staff. So there are 2.25 positions which we have taken out of that part of the organization. And we're looking at two critical needs. One is a security specialist full-time in human resources, which would be able to assist with meetings and such. And we have fewer volunteers we can rely on for, say, evening meetings with the pandemic. So that is one need we would like to address. The other is for an audiovisual technician in information technology. And that is a similar type position. We're relying on field technicians. Their core duties do not involve this, and the demand for these services for boards and commissions and other meetings has just grown to where it is starting to affect their ability to do their main jobs. So we're looking at adding an audiovisual technician, and these costs would largely offset going forward. So with that, are there any questions?
Madam Mayor,
Looks like there are no, oh, yes, go ahead.
I was just going to say, seeing no questions, I would move that we approve the interim budget changes as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Woodings,
Yes.
Bajent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I just need to ask Mike, does this mean we'll have no more green fog from geothermal leaks downtown?
Hopefully, this is another step in continuing the maintenance, which does address some of those issues. I understand we've had fewer of those issues, and this is along the same lines of a project, I understand.
Thank you.
Good, thanks. Mike, it looks like you're up again with the quarterly report.
Yes, and I will share my screen here. And yes, we recently published the first quarter financial report, and you should have received an electronic copy in your materials. You'll see there is, if you can see my screen now, there is a picture of a rabbit playing a guitar on the cover. So just getting right into a few slides we normally have. It's only the first quarter, but still we do like to check in. And no property tax comes in the first quarter other than some small amounts, which are usually prior year taxes. But the first payment did come in January, as usually does, and it was very close to the same percentage of the levy. The levy is down this year because of the public safety initiative effect. Moving on to sales tax, same thing. No sales tax or very little comes in the first quarter, but it did come in now in second quarter, and it is tracking as we expect. The budget we have set last summer is probably going to be low. We will just continue to monitor, and if current collections continue and sales tax is surprisingly up despite the pandemic, we may have to even raise our budget as we get 3 or 6 months down the road. Development fees, construction continues at a steady pace around town. There's some signs that may be picking up. Obviously, there's high demand for housing, and similar type of situation. We have a conservative budget, and if the year continues as it is, we could end up looking to raise that budget down the road. But we're at 31% of the year's budget through the first quarter. Franchise fees have been a little soft with the pandemic, just less activity with downtown buildings and certain businesses and such, but it's not a significant issue we're seeing there in terms of materiality. Liquor tax, nothing has come in yet, but liquor sales continue to be robust, like 20% year over year. And again, it's because of the pandemic. Department revenue, we are close to our 25% benchmark. We have reduced the budget there, given we expect continued issues being able to hold certain park activities and programs, but we appear to be doing fine there in terms of the percent of budget we've seen so far, and hopefully that will improve as the pandemic hopefully winds down. Fines and forfeitures are down because reduced traffic and parking activity, again, given the pandemic and people working remotely. The other thing to mention here is the other revenue is up. That's where some federal pandemic grant revenue came in the first quarter. So all in all, revenues are looking at as we expect, and there is some potential that some of these revenues will do better than the conservative budgets we set. If there aren't any questions, I'll move on to talk expenses as briefly as I can. Our personnel is at 23% of the year's budget, which is slightly below the benchmark. We are getting some cost savings out of a partial hiring freeze and reduced hiring and just higher vacancies than a year ago. We also, this quarter, were a little bit low in the health benefits. We don't have as much booked in the quarter, so it shows at 19% of the budget, but that will catch up in the second quarter. Repairs and maintenance are up at 41%, and that is due to the timing of software licenses. Those are front-loaded earlier in the year, and that ends up being a significant change when that comes through, but that is what's driving that up. Bus operations are down, and that is just due to the timing of the operational advance or part of the advance to Valley Regional Transit, and that's happening in the second quarter this year versus the first quarter typically. And then the rest of our maintenance and operation expenses are a little low. Some of that is just due to the timing of certain projects across the organization and when they get started. And right now we're still not firing on all cylinders given we're working remotely on that. And it's, again, early in the year. The other thing to mention here is our other expense is up, and that is due to the timing of year-end transfers we did following the close of fiscal year 2020. So all in all, our expenses are looking good. We've got some cost savings, which will likely continue just for personnel, and we're at our 25% benchmark. If there aren't any questions, I will move on to the economic brief. I've got a few slides there.
Go ahead.
Okay, as I mentioned, development activity continues at a steady level. I wouldn't call it high, I wouldn't call it low. It has been steady, but it's been good. People are still moving here. Things are still continuing, just maybe a little bit slower than they would have been, but they may well pick up. And as you'll see in the graph below, we have an even worse housing shortage than we had before, and housing inventory is exceptionally low. Median home prices increased 20% last year, from 312,000 to 375, and that leads the nation. So certainly a demand for housing is out there. I mentioned sales tax earlier, and here are the numbers. If you just look at the revenue sharing, they increased 13% over the same quarter the year before. And gross sales tax is up 15% if you include online sales, which some of that is bypassing revenue sharing. So very strong. That is a good sign for the local economy that it is doing relatively well given the pandemic, and hopefully sets us up for a quick rebound once the pandemic winds down. Through June, the city, our collections are limited to 1% growth. But given last year finished stronger than we anticipated, the base that 1% growth is based on is higher than we thought it would be last year. Moving on to airport, the traffic grew modestly during the quarter. I believe I've got a graph on a next slide or two, and approximately 50% of the quarter before is where things ended up if you look at the fourth quarter of 2020. And then this year's strong economic growth is projected, kind of a rebound from last year. 3.1% growth this year is good, and I've recently read that could even be higher. Some economists are thinking we may have a better rebound, but that will start by earning back the 3.6% growth economists projected we had for 2020, or the loss, negative growth. And then employment is worth mentioning because it does appear employment growth has stalled somewhat. And I've got a graph down below, and this it's part of the case for more stimulus. But the unemployment rate decreased during the quarter, but so did the number of employed people. And that suggests some people have left the workforce. This is a lot of, particularly mothers have left the workforce. You have kids who aren't going to school and such. So you've got some difficult things going on there still. Certainly frontline jobs. Some people are just, if they feel at risk of the virus, that some people have left those jobs. And you will still see a lot of hiring signs, and a lot of those are for the jobs that some people, or most people would prefer not to do, where you're exposed to potential risk of the virus. Demand is higher for remote work jobs versus in-person jobs. So hopefully with vaccination and pandemic winding down, that will change. But regaining lost jobs may not occur until 2023, depending on who's saying such, but we're still down about 10 million jobs. So here is the unemployment graph, and you can see latter half of last year, it just kind of went steady and tailed off a little bit. The other thing with some of these numbers is labor economists told me you have to be a little careful. There can be noise when we get big fluctuations in things, but nonetheless, we're operating pretty well, but we're kind of at a steady state, and between stimulus and vaccination, hopefully that will start to improve.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Is that rate, unemployment rate, is that comparable to other similar cities or comparable cities?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halburn, yes, this one down here is one we compare to other metropolitan statistical areas. Boise is at 4.5%. Denver is up at 8.5%. I looked at this and there's been more outbreak there that appears to be hampering their economy. So we're doing pretty well here. We're 92nd out of 389 MSAs in the country. So makes the case that we've had less effect from the virus, maybe some time to prepare, and just being more of a remote city probably helped us some. And then the previous slide here shows just comparing within the state of Idaho and the national average is 6.5%. So this was December. So yes, unemployment, and then here is the airport passenger traffic. And just, again, grew somewhat, but really not making a lot of headway over the 50% mark, so more limited travel. And so in summary, revenues and expenditures are within our expectations. Conservative revenue budgeting, cost saving efforts are expected to generate some budget savings if current trends continue. We will be checking in, obviously, second quarter and third quarter, and we will monitor and reevaluate where we are, but we feel pretty good about how things are looking. And overall economic conditions appear to be stable despite uncertainty as to how and when things can further open up as the pandemic winds down. So that is what I had for that report. I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Mike, couple of questions, mostly to do on the economic side with housing and the impact. We're already seeing the impact on cost of living. What other impacts can we expect from that if we can't get more housing built?
Madam Mayor, Council Member, that is a good question. I think one thing we've had that has really helped is just the eviction moratorium, because you start to ask, where can people get housed here? Immigration still appears to be up. And so where are people going? We've had a number of multifamily projects, and I believe they're opening up and filling. And I think the other impact I've heard is if we cannot build more houses here, it's easier to build them out in the valley. So I think one impact is we may have more development out in the valley. The other thing is just that even a 10% housing cost increase or price increase, that still far exceeds wage growth. Even at low interest rates, just affordability is just getting more and more difficult. So it is a concerning thing that we are having that much of a supply-demand imbalance the way things are going with the pandemic. So I don't know if I answered your question, but those are some thoughts I had top of mind.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I expected essentially that answer, but wanted to make sure that we got that on the record. I appreciate it.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for that presentation, Mike. And pretty much along the same lines as Council President Clegg, I want to share a concern that a constituent has shared with me. And that is, it's an individual who had their rent increased by $300 this coming month. And her fear is that whatever stimulus money folks might be getting with this new administration, that some landlords may basically absorb that by having these rather large increases in monthly rent. And so I just want to put that on record that, hopefully there will be some stimulus money coming for folks, but that because we don't have adequate protections, unfortunately, in our community for renters, that, that money could be absorbed by landlords who take advantage of the lack of regulation that we have. So I'm wondering how that might figure into our our growth and our bounce back this year.
Madam Mayor, council member, if that's a question to me, yes. If it's more difficult for the average office worker, for example, to afford to buy a house, it's probably even more difficult for the average, younger person who may work at Starbucks or something, or work in a service sector position. If you're getting fewer hours or things, forget about buying a house. It's just, can you find housing at a rate that is affordable to you? So yes, same type of thing. I think it's, a lot of people are doing fine because they can work remotely. They're not missing income. And a lot of people, they are out of work or less work, or they have to be exposed to the virus. I think the one other thing that's helping, in addition to the eviction prevention, is the enhanced unemployment benefits, which have been, as part of the stimulus packages. It's, the counter argument is that it gives people a disincentive to work. But for those people, I think it has helped quite a bit as far as it is increased their unemployment benefits.
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Mike, I apologize if I missed this in the report. You had a slide that was talking about a relatively steady development rate that we saw here in the community, and you said that was largely residential. I'm curious if you have any information about commercial development and commercial vacancy and how that's looking.
Madam Mayor, council member, I don't have a slide in here. There are some slides or graphs in the economic brief, and I do have a little bit of insight just because I work with planning and development fairly regularly as we look at the pipeline. I think residential housing and multifamily housing, which technically falls in commercial, tremendous demand for that. And I think that will be a bright spot going forward, even though the houses coming out are not as affordable to a lot of people as they were. Commercial, what I understand is there is some softness, just with some businesses have gone out of business. There's fewer people working downtown in office buildings and such. And so there's some softness there. And some of that may persist, and how much has the world changed, and will that continue after the pandemic? But the other factor which could be out there is just this in-migration and the economy that is better than other places. We probably look like a pretty good place to invest if you're a commercial investor, because we're continuing to grow. People are moving here. That bodes well for future demand and future business space and just commercial development. So the multifamily is continuing. It still appears like we'll be fine. There'll be quite a bit of development that occurs here, but for the time being, it's a little bit slower. It'll take us a while to adjust, probably.
And Madam Mayor, just a follow-up question there. So Mike, kind of related in that kind of your bottom bullet points there, the second one, demand is higher for remote work jobs versus in-person jobs. When you say that, are you talking about demand as far as the individuals go, or demands from the actual businesses? What are we lacking in being able to provide?
Yes, council member, that the good point that could be worded or stated a little bit differently is from the worker standpoint. If I have a choice between working remotely and being able to reduce risk of the virus versus going into a store where I'm working with people coming through, their demand is higher for that remote work, because that is, you just take away that risk. And you will see around town at the, fast food places and such, they're short of people and working. So it is from the worker's perspective.
Perfect. Thanks, Mike.
All right, it looks like there's nobody else that would like to ask any questions, Mike. I really appreciate you being with us, walking through with clarity where we're at, and also addressing some of the challenges that as a community we face and how that impacts our economy, particularly around housing affordability and availability of housing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Take care. Next up, I see Linda there. Hi, Linda. Thanks for joining us. Linda's here to talk and give an update on the small business grant program. And actually, I think, oh, and hi, Kathy. It sounds like, I imagine that you're here for the same reason. Mike's presentation, I think, is such a perfect dovetail or prelude to this, because as a city, both with council and my office, we wanted to do everything we could to support businesses within our community during this really tough time. And while we didn't receive as a city direct funding from the federal government because we're fewer than 500,000 people, we did have access to a small amount of CARES money relative to the need, I should say, relative to the demand, that we couldn't use to reimburse our own losses. And so decided instead to use that $1.5 million to support businesses. And before Linda gives us an update, there are just a couple of things I wanted to flag. We knew going into this that the demand, or we expected going into this that the demand would be high. And we first wanted to make sure that we made funds available to those businesses in our community that hadn't qualified or weren't able to receive PPP dollars in the spring. We did then open it up to businesses that had received them after giving advanced opportunity to those that hadn't. And, we learned in this that the demand is indeed much higher than what we had available to us to provide as grants. And so since then have been advocating related to the next stimulus package that one, cities receive funds directly, regardless of the size of city. And two, that we take what we learned from this program, and there are many cities that learn the same thing. And in receiving funds directly in the next stimulus package, which we hope to see, to eliminate the red tape that made it difficult for small businesses to quickly receive the funds that they needed to receive. Because the process required us to allow people to get pre-approval, but then businesses and the people in them had to submit for reimbursement. And so that's the kind of red tape, long drawn out process that we hope we won't see if there's a program like this provided to cities in the next stimulus package. But overall, really appreciate the work that staff did on this. And of course, the learning that we've had from it and working with businesses that didn't receive funds, make it better the next time if we're able to open it up again. So thanks, Linda, for joining us today.
No problem. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen really quickly. Got some slides with some information. And hopefully you can see that now.
Yes, we can see it.
Great. So I just give some background. Mayor McLean touched on this a little bit about how the process worked and the timeline, but it was back in August of 2020 when the state announced that the coronavirus relief funds that the cities received could be used to provide small business grants. And so in the month of August, we decided as a city to allocate $1.5 million towards this program. And we launched on September 16th and with a $15,000 max award limit on each grant. On November 25th, we extended, as Councilman McLean mentioned, the program to include businesses that had already received COVID funding in excess of 15 grand. And then in December 22nd, because of the overwhelming demand that we got when we opened up the program and extended it to those businesses, we stopped accepting new applications because it was clear that the volume of applications that we already had approved, that we were going to exceed our budgeted capacity for the program. And then on January 15th was the last day that businesses could submit eligible receipts. And then February 16th was the official day that all program funds were exhausted. And we ended up actually spending a little bit more than 1.5 million because our admin expenses were lower than we had anticipated. So we had originally asked or set aside 1.75 million for this program, 75 being the 5% that would be allowed for admin expenses. And we ended up only spending 20,000 in admin expenses. So we were able to distribute a little bit more in grants. Just want to quickly say and give a shout out to the team who helped administer this program. It was a lot of work and a lot of them did this kind of in addition to their day job. So I want to thank Rhiannon Avery from Housing Community Development. She really helped us utilize Zoom grants and the software that HCD had used for purposes such as this in the past. And so That was really helpful to get us up and running really quickly with a software system that was easy to administer. Brian Marcel, Steve Wren from internal audit were great. They pitched in, rolled up their sleeves. They were really helping us on the day-to-day front, reviewing and approving applications, reviewing and approving invoices, interacting with applicants. Steve Allison, Sean Olson, Jean-Ju Clifton, all from finance. They all were instrumental in the back end, reviewing and approving invoices, getting invoices approved through the Lawson system, payments dispersed. And then Jean-Ju is going to be very instrumental in making sure that we get all of our money back from the state, that we submit all the proper grant documentation to the state so that we get reimbursed for the funds that we've already dispersed under this program. And then we did hire a temporary employee, Tracy Cooper, who helped us with all the communication. She monitored the small business grant email account, and she responded to emails, and she responded to questions from applicants as well. And then another, on the right-hand side, you can see a varied degree of other team members who were involved in a lot of support. Myself, Sean, Kathy, Shirley, all from the mayor's office. We were kind of helping out with the program design and any support that we could provide. Kelly Fleming from legal was really helping in any appeals that we received from applicants if they were denied, and helping us make sure that we had all aspects of the grant program, the legal considerations covered. Lana Graybell from engagement really helped with all of our communications with the website, all the messaging that went out to the relative to the program. And then Yvette Harris, also on the finance side, was very supportive in terms of setting up the back end processes. So the process, as as Mayor McLean outlined, was designed in such a way to ensure compliance. We designed it as a reimbursement-based program, largely because the eligibility requirements for this were very strict. They were the same requirements that we had and that the state had for the coronavirus relief funds. And the funds could not be used for various purposes. It could not be used for debt payment. They could not be used for mortgage payments. They could not be used for personnel expenses. They couldn't be used to pay taxes or fines, and they couldn't be used to cover any revenue losses. So really what they could be used for is just direct expenses related to COVID for a specified period of time, which was June 20th through the end of December. So because of those strict eligibility requirements and to ensure compliance, we did this on a reimbursement-based program. So the process was, as applicants would submit their application through Zoom grants, we would verify that the business meets the base level requirements of the program. As you can see, we decided that we wanted to focus on smaller businesses. They had to have 100 employees or less. They had to be located in Boise city limits, had to be in good standing, registered with the Secretary of State, could not be a lobbying organization or set up for political partisan activities, had to have liability insurance, so on and so forth. Then the next step was if the application was approved, the applicant needed to sign the grant agreement, which assured that which kind of laid out what the max amount of the award would be for that particular business. They were complying and agreeing and signing, attesting to all the compliance requirements, the terms and conditions of the grant. And then there was obviously the standard indemnification language included in that grant agreement. Then the next step in the process was they would submit invoices, and the invoices would be basically proof of the eligible expenses that we would reimburse. And again, that was pretty limited amount of items that we could be reimbursed. All had to be directly related to the health emergency and expenses incurred as a result. The one thing we were allowed to, the state gave some flexibility on the requirements, is we were allowed to reimburse for rent. So that was nice. And we saw towards the end of the program, a lot of disbursements did go for that purpose. And then once they submitted invoices, the team would review those, ensure that they were in compliance, and then we would make sure that all the documentation, the grant agreement was signed, that we received all the W-9 documentation, the other things that we needed from the businesses, and then we would approve that, and it would go through the process, and we would either cut a check or send them a wire for the funds. So I'm going to just give you guys an update and some overview of kind of what the program looked like, who we ended up dispersing to, and what some of the statistics were. So in total, we over 500 applications were submitted. We ended up approving 297 and 61 were declined. The pending applications were those that were submitted, but they were submitted but were not approved or declined prior to that cutoff date that we had initiated on December 22nd. And the average award that we granted was around $8,300. Next, as you know, we paid out $1.55 million, and that was about 720 invoices covering about 720 different expense line items. We declined actually a little over $500,000 in invoices because they did not meet requirements. And then at the close of the program, when the funds were exhausted, we had about $830,000 left in invoices that were not able to be reimbursed because we ran out of funds. And then if you see on the right-hand side, these are the types of businesses and the percentage of who received funds. Restaurants and bars being the highest recipient of our funds at 20%, down to the lowest of agriculture. Example of professional services firms is like law office consultants, tax preparers, marketing firms, so on and so forth. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Linda, thank you for the presentation. I'm curious, we talked a little bit about potential future funds being opened up, and I'm wondering how the businesses who have already applied, maybe some of those ones who are pending, might fall into a future funding plan.
Yeah, unfortunately, Kathy had to jump off the call at 1, and she was kind of hoping to go over what the funding is looking like at the federal level and the status of that. She actually had to jump to join a call with Senator Risch to advocate for the new package and approval of the new package that's going through Congress right now. But as I mentioned, I think there is additional funding potentially that could come, and I think it'd be beneficial to the city and those applicants if that funding had maybe a little bit more flexibility than the coronavirus relief funds that we had to use for this program. As I mentioned, they didn't cover revenue losses and some other items, which I felt like a lot of businesses, that's where they really needed support, and it didn't cover personnel expenses either. So we're really hopeful that the next round of funding that comes, which it looks like there is going to be some funding allocated to local governments if it does pass, and it's just a matter of how much. That formula and keeps changing, and then it'll be a matter of what the requirements are on the use of that funding. That could definitely be an option.
Madam Mayor, just quick follow-up.
Sure.
Linda, can you go back one slide?
Sure. Oops.
Or maybe a couple slides back to your pie chart.
Yep.
I guess if it's possible, I would love for us to take a look at those pending applications who have already received at least one original letter saying that they were approved for a certain amount of funds, who maybe missed something along the way or got in a little bit too late, that we at least consider the work that they've already put into this grant and see if there's possibility of helping the folks who have already applied and maybe spent some funds already, thinking that they were going to get reimbursed, but then didn't quite, fit into the allowances that we had available. So if we could take a look at that kind of pending groups and seeing if they're still eligible, I think before taking in new applicants, I think that would be something worth considering.
You mean if new funds are available, to clarify? If
new funds are available, that's correct. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure. Yeah.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Linda, if you could stay on that pie chart, it's great.
Thanks.
I have a question about the minority businesses. Can you tell me a little bit about how a business gets categorized as a minority business rather than be in one of those other categories? Does that make sense?
That's a really good question. And I unfortunately don't have a direct answer for you. So Rhiannon and Avery put this data together for me really last minute. And I was kind of wondering that question myself, how that was categorized versus putting into these other businesses. So I can certainly get the answer to that question and get back with you. I apologize. I don't know that off the top of my head.
That would be great, Linda. And also just curious to see how well we did in ensuring that folks who might not speak English as a primary language, how successful we were in helping them navigate this system so that they too could have a chance at these resources. So,
yeah, I do know that the website where we had all the information on the program was translated into Spanish as well. And Zoom Grants also had a Spanish version. So the applicant was in Spanish as well. So hopefully I can get more information, maybe more information from them, our applicants, if how easy it was for them. But we did try to ensure it was as accessible as possible.
That's wonderful. And perhaps look at some other languages. I know that we have some really great entrepreneurs from the refugee community and see how they fared through this process. Thank you, Linda.
You're welcome.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Kind of a follow-up, Linda, on Councilmember Halliburton's question. I believe the state still has a fair amount of funding left. Can you tell me how much that is?
Yeah, Kathy actually reached out to the state before this meeting to verify what funds they had left. And after the allocation of all the funds to the states and the tribal communities and their small business grant program, they had about 75 million left in funds. And Kathy mentioned to me that they have gone ahead and allocated all those funds out.
Oh, they have.
So
I was just going to ask, is there any chance to ask for some more, given that we know we had more demand than we could fill?
Yeah, my understanding is what they had left over, they have gone ahead and allocated.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember Bajent, then Whittings.
Thanks, Linda, for this. This is helpful. One of the things that I wanted to touch on briefly, and none of this is criticism. I understand exactly what situation you and your team was in and why. But we started the program on September 16th. We didn't fully disperse funds until 5 months later in February. And your presentation was really helpful in educating many frustrated applicants, I think, who may be watching, as to why that is, all of the hoops that you had to go through to check and cross-check that the funds are being dispersed correctly, and then that we were eligible in turn to reimburse. But if we go back through this process again, if we do it again with additional funds, is there anything that we could change to smooth that, speed that up, make it easier? I mean, one thing we could do is grants and then reimburse and claw back, as I've advocated we do for unemployment at the state level. I'm just trying to think of ways. I mean, the point of emergency relief funds, of course, is to relieve an emergency. And again, it's not criticism of the Herculean task that you guys managed to pull off, but 5 months is a long time. And I wonder if we've thought about how to streamline that.
Yeah, we definitely should do a lessons learned for sure. I think one thing is that, the city has never, this isn't our core business. We've never done anything like this before. So I think we have to look at, and we were afraid with this program. One of the reasons why we wanted to administer it is because the compliance requirements were so strict, as we wanted to make sure that our applicants were in compliance so the city wasn't liable for those funds if they got clawed back. One thing we may want to consider if we do receive future funding is maybe passing that through to another entity that or local nonprofit that actually does this for a living, and has the experience working with these small businesses and understands kind of I think a little bit, how to work with them better and get the information that they need and communicate with them a little bit clearer. So that would be something I think we should look at if we were able to get additional funding.
And
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea, because the issue is the transaction costs here were so high. Every document seemed like it had to go through 3 different people 3 different times. And if it turns out outsourcing it in some way is more efficient, I would really love to see it.
Well, and I'll jump in here too. I mean, some of what we There's the stuff that we can try to change slightly at our level, but we're trying to fix it before it gets to us next time around. So by advocating at the national level, sharing what we learned and the experiences that people in our community had in attempting to receive this emergency funding, and hoping that in the next stimulus package, it either comes direct to the city instead of us having to, justify receiving the funds from the state. And then the allowances for how we can administer emergency relief make it easier so that we aren't doing this, so that we get money into the hands of our businesses that are supporting our people more quickly is really something that we want to see out of this. And also I'd point out that the process that businesses had to go through to get reimbursement for us, we as a city had to go through that same excruciating process to get reimbursed by the state using CARES funding for the losses that we incurred, or I should say for the expenses that we incurred related to COVID. And so also having firsthand experience, we know that it's less than ideal. And we are advocating to make sure that if we don't get funding directly, but we get it again through the state, that some of that is made easier as well, so that it's easier on us to make it easier on people in our community to receive the funds they need to receive.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
this is actually a fantastic dovetail for my next question, Linda. I know that we did partner with some other organizations in order to get the word out about the city's grant program, like Janus and the Economic Opportunity Program that interfaces directly with refugee-owned businesses. How did that process go? And did you see is that kind of where you saw some future opportunity to have some partnerships to get these funds out in the future?
Yeah, definitely. I think it went well. They were very helpful in getting the word out. The Downtown Business Association and other, organizations also helped. I think a lesson learned there too is just, I think, a little bit more clarity for those businesses on how the program worked. Maybe in the process would have been helpful, and a little bit more education versus just, kind of focusing on go in and apply and you can get these funds, because I think a lot of businesses were surprised by the process. I think there was an expectation that they just fill out the application and when we send 15 grand. And so I think that a little bit more communication and maybe a little bit more outreach on how the program is designed and the process would have been helpful as well.
That's great feedback. And thank you. I remember very early in the pandemic when folks were applying for kind of those first rounds of economic stimulus. And there were so many businesses who were left out of that, from, individual contractors to many others, and, trying to like drum something up at that early stage. And so it was great to see on down the road that we were able to provide some relief. I appreciate all of your hard work around that.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention, I don't know if they're watching, but City Council, we lent 2 staff people to this effort, and Steve Wren and Brian Marcel, I know, were integral to the success that the effort did have, and also to keeping the administrative costs low. And I just wanted to recognize them and thank them, and thank the rest of the council for your permission to lend them to this effort. I think it was important.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Linda, for the presentation, and another big kudos to the work that was done in setting up a program quickly, figuring out how to do it on the fly, and then importantly recognizing what we could do differently, and then helping us advocate federally for some changes next time around. And I'll just leave us with, we're really hopeful that we'll be able to do this again, stimulus willing, that we can build on what we've been able to provide, support those, and Councilmember Halliburton, really appreciate your suggestion that we start with those that are pending because they're ready, and then be able to further support small businesses in our community that are really the backbone of opportunity for our residents. So thanks, Linda. And then finally, we just have one more item. It's the resolution for our health order. I just wanted to give an overview of what it is for council members and then the public. This health order is a continuation of what we've had with a couple changes, because last Friday, the health district issued an advisory rather than maintaining their own public health order. And so we incorporated, as the city of Boise, the language from the health district's advisory that still requires masks in public places, encourages distancing. We changed our wording around the airport because the federal administration has now issued mask orders in particular areas related to transit that they oversee. So there's a change there. And we increased the number of people available to come together in groups to 50. And with that, I will, I do want to say too that there have been questions as to, when this will change. We're going to continue to look to the public health district for their advisories, given the steps they've decided to take with the makeup of the board. But also, we are close. Warm weather is coming. I want to make sure that we continue, as we saw in some of those economic slides, to be able to be supportive of our businesses who want to protect their employees and their customers so that we can stay open. Our economy can continue to move forward and we can recover. And in the summer and in the spring, things become so much more manageable. So we're really close, and I think all of us share the desire to see that we don't backtrack given the progress we've made since November. And then just want to thank the health systems for their stated support of this order and the steps that we're taking within the city to continue on the path of protecting public health and restoring our economy.
Madam Mayor?
Was that Councilman Thompson?
It was. I just have a quick question, clarification.
Sure.
I know this is primarily self-enforced. I mean, it's like a lot of things we do, but if a business once again decides not to abide by the policy within the city of Boise, is it that a citizen can notify, or they could be educated in some way? I'm trying to remember the best step.
Sure. The enforcement program that we started in November remains in effect. So our code enforcement office of the clerk will work with businesses to make sure that, one, they understand the rules first, and then take action if necessary, if we are alerted to the fact that businesses are not following the rules. And also, importantly, if a business needs support in their desire to enforce the rules, they have a number that they can call as well. And we saw that be taken advantage of by businesses, and also a gratitude from businesses that we were offering as a city support of their own efforts to enforce this mandate.
Okay, one last question. If a citizen does report it, is that remain anonymous, the citizen that reports, can it?
That is a question that I'm not sure of that answer. And, oh, Linda's still here. Well, we're so lucky, because I was just about, I'm going to have to ask Linda to provide that answer. Go ahead, Linda.
Yes, the complaint will be anonymous. We do ask for the complainant's number just so we can call them back if we have further questions, but we do not release that information to anybody else.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
With that, I move approval of Resolution 10421.
Second.
And Madam Mayor, if I could, I want to thank you and the rest of the administration, rest of the staff at the city for continuing to be diligent. I think you said it well. We don't want to backtrack. I know that a lot of people think we're in the home stretch and maybe we can relax, but if we can stay diligent for a few more months here, I think we can get a lot closer to the end of this and stay healthy. So I really appreciate the order as it's written based on the advisory from CDH. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I echo Council President Clegg's sentiments, especially today as I prepare to testify before the Idaho State Legislature, where unfortunately mask wearing is not a priority. And so I have a particular appreciation for the difficult but necessary stance that you've taken in trying to protect our community. So thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Yeah, I would like to offer thanks as well. I've been reached out to by a number of different businesses who are kind of awaiting their turn on the vaccine timeline. And until, their employees get that, they're still concerned about their safety. They still want to make sure that they're taking care of their employees. And so by and large, all the businesses that have been reaching out have been in overwhelming support of this and are, have asked me personally to relay that thanks to you. So thank you for continuing to put this forward.
Thanks.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you. At first, I wasn't totally sure how this was going to go with Boise having our own health order that's different than the rest of the county. But like Jimmy or Councilmember Halliburton, I'm sorry, I've heard really great thoughts of support for this, and also from folks who live in Meridian and Eagle and our surrounding communities who don't feel safe going out and about shopping in stores, and have committed to only shopping in stores in Boise because we have committed to this protection for their health and the health of our community. So for every person who said, I'll never shop in a Boise business again, I've heard from about 5 who say they only will, many of whom don't even live here. So I think it's really a positive for our community, both for our health and our economy.
All right, thank you all. Well, we would not be able to do this without the support of the council. And so just as people have been gracious in thanking me, I just want to thank each of you because, it is, as Council Member Woodings pointed out, preferable that, the whole county, and we've been saying through this whole pandemic, the whole region be on the same page. But I would not want us waiting for them to prevent us from taking action to protect our residents and, importantly, to protect our economy as such an important engine here for the Valley, the state, but most importantly, of course, for our people here at home. So with that, I think I'd ask the clerk to do a roll call vote. Thank you.
Woodings,
Yes.
Agent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. We have no unfinished or new business, so I
Madam
think
Mayor,
that
I move we adjourn.
Second.
the motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.